But when I look at the parable of the sower, not the sower, but the ones with the talents, the one who buried the talent, he buried the talent because of how he viewed the gift giver. The fellow who went at it with adamants and ebullience, he went at it because of how he viewed the gift giver. We are too gifted to be at the bottom of the pole.
Before I say a hallelujah, which I was tempted to saying, let me go back to what you said earlier, that you would have contact with the mayor, you would have contact with the senator, you would help to make voters within your environment understand their responsibility. I would assume this would have extended in recent times to one of the most historical events where there was an election for the first time of an African American president, Barack Obama. Did you find yourself having to play a direct role?
We played a role. Let's be honest about the American political way. I wanted George Bush out of there. I mean, period. And so I thought the best candidate to get George out was really Hillary Clinton. That's what I thought. So I had Hillary, Bill, I had Bill at my church, and Barack was the now president, Obama was scheduled to come. He couldn't come because of some reasons that to me were quite significant. One is, he had our vote. He had our vote.
Okay.
Because of what he represents. So, as far as I was concerned, when he said he had to go to
no, but that
my
vote
white
was
brother's
never
church,
taken for granted.
I do understand that he didn't do that. He didn't do that. And but he had our vote for the most part. But he had to go and solicit. As far as I was concerned, he needed to have dinner with the Ku Klux Klan. He needed to have dinner with the total opposite group.
That is if they'll allow it.
Because once Hillary was out of the way, then we knew where we had to go. And yes, we were quite significant. In fact, during the election day, the Los Angeles media was broadcasting out of the church that I pastored. And they broadcasted it worldwide from the church that I pastored. My choir, I spoke, we were there all day because we were behind him being in. And that's really what our responsibility is. But, and it's a big but, if we as a people do not advance our causes within our socio-political economic environment and have had an African-American president, it will backlash and it will come back to say to us, with all of the opportunities that you have been afforded, with getting an America that finally decides to vote for an African-American, and if you as a people don't further yourself, then this will come back as
the American, and following up on what you're saying, the American polity is such that in spite of the fact that President Barack Obama is at the helm of that society, but it continues to reflect historical trends of the powerful and the most influential being white. Now, are we not, in a sense, abrogating responsibility, and I assume we are not doing this, if we do not continuously keep President Barack Obama within the fold of having to understand the reality from whence he comes? And if this is happening, how is it happening? So that he does not interpret reality from a falseness of the mighty and powerful.
Well, I don't think that he will. In fact, anybody who was editor of the Harvard Review is probably in his thinking more white than we are. And I can argue that for many, most of my friends, when they begin to argue, don't think that he shares in his ancestral line the history that we have. And arguably, that I would argue that he should understand it for the great part. But I don't think, based on that, that he's going to have an unrealistic point of view as it relates to what happens. I'm looking at, for instance, what I thought was a horrible mistake was for us to have our president making a speech about getting the Olympics to Chicago. I think he was in the catch-22. I think personally he should have bowed out. he should have bowed out, because the Olympic Committee is not supposed to be politically driven at all. And then you have the president of one country making a very impassioned speech a passionate speech to get them here.
If he holds hopes and shoulders, you know, the kind of expectations we have about the significance of an African president for the first time being at the helm of such a powerful society, shouldn't we color his view about representing the opinions of those that assumably he represents?
Well, I think to be open-minded about it, he represents everybody in the country.
Oh, yeah.
And so we can't just hold him to doing those things that are significantly black-oriented or African-oriented, but I think he should be fair in his presentation, and I think he should stick his neck out for those people who are underprivileged and who need the opportunities. I think every president should have a proclivity to bless those who are less fortunate than others. And I think the church should understand its role in supporting him in a political sense, and that is volunteerism, operating in political things, doing those things in our communities and neighborhoods that show our involvement, but not just sitting back and saying, now God has sent us a Messiah and he's going to operate from the White House and he's going to make everything right for us. I mean, we had people saying, now that we have an African-American president, my rent's going to be paid by the government.
That's the role that I'm questioning, as to what the responsibility of the African Americans as well as Africans in the world is. But we've run out of time. Shall I then ask you a different question as to what your expectation to launching your ministry in this country would be? Or to walk us through that.
Well, what I would like to do is to perpetuate the thought that theology has to change in its application to our social, economic, and political environment. And to truthfully operate in that environment, we have to understand the difference between what is liturgical worship and what is ethically possible because of my belief in God. And if you check the Old Testament and look closely, my position is you have to understand the metaphor. And what God is saying is, they honor me with their lips, their heart is far from me. I don't want just a lot of sacrifice. What I want is for the widow to be clothed, for the fatherless to be treated with dignity, for the underprivileged to be handled properly, and for those who are given opportunities to go after your opportunities, because responsibility shows respect.
Well, on that positive note, Bishop, we have to leave it. It's really been a pleasure having you talking to us.
Thank you, Ambassador.
Thank you very much for coming.
Thank you very much.
Thank you
for having me.
To our viewers out there, please do stay with us as news is next, and thank you for watching. Goodbye.